What makes us human? Is it our tools? Is it our cities? Or is it our language? The ability to speak, to convey complex thoughts, to plan, to judge. We like to think we are the only ones on this planet who discuss the future, who debate morality, who name the stars. But what if we're wrong? What if deep in the wildest corners of the Appalachian Mountains, there is another conversation happening? A conversation that has been going on for thousands of years. A conversation about us. The story you are about to hear comes from a man named Arthur. In 1998, he was one of the most respected field recordists in the country. He went into the Great Smoky Mountains to record the silence of nature. He came back with something else. He came back with tapes. Hours of them. Recordings of a tribe that science says doesn't exist, speaking a language that no linguist has ever categorized. Arthur has lived in hiding for 25 years, terrified not of what he saw, but of what he heard. Because once you translate what's on those tapes, once you understand what they call us, you realized that to them, we aren't the apex predators. We are the plague. This is his confession, and this is the first time these tapes are being described to the public. Put your headphones on, but be warned. Some things once heard can never be silenced. Sound doesn't lie. That's the first thing you learn in my line of work. A camera can be tricked. You can fake a photo with shadows, you can use CGI, you can force perspective. But sound is physics. It's a vibration in the air captured on magnetic tape. You can't fake the acoustic signature of a larynx the size of a diesel engine. You can't fake the resonant frequency of a chest cavity that creates infrasound capable of vibrating your sternum from 3 miles away. My name is Arthur. I haven't used my last name since 1999. Back then, I was a bioacoustic researcher working on a grant for a major university. My job was to capture pristine soundscapes, recordings of nature with zero human noise pollution. No airplanes, no highways, no distant chainsaws. Do you have any idea how hard that is to find? It's almost impossible. We are a noisy species. We bleed sound into everything. In the autumn of '98, I identified a zone of silence in a remote sector of the Great Smoky Mountains, near the Tennessee-North Carolina border. It was a bowl-shaped valley, shielded by high ridges, accessible only by a 3-day hike off-trail. The map showed nothing but green topography lines. No trails, no cabins, just old-growth forest that hadn't been logged since the 1800s. I packed 80 pounds of gear. Nagra reel-to-reel recorders, Sennheiser shotgun microphones, parabolic dishes, miles of XLR cables, and enough lead-acid batteries to run a submarine. I told my colleagues I'd be gone for 3 weeks. I wanted to capture the rutting calls of elk, the migration of warblers, the sound of wind in hemlocks that were saplings when Columbus landed. I was arrogant. I thought I was the one listening. I thought I was the observer. But when you wear headphones in the deep woods, when you turn that gain knob up until you can hear a mouse heartbeat at 50 yards, you realize something. You aren't the only one listening. And the things that were listening to me, they had things to say. Horrible, intelligent, calculated things. I'm going to play the transcripts for you. I'm going to tell you what happened in that valley. But I need you to understand one thing. They know we are here. They know exactly what we are doing to the planet. And they have a plan for when we stop. To understand what happened, you have to understand the geography. The Great Smokies aren't like the Rockies. They aren't jagged, angry peaks trying to stab the sky. They are old. They are rounded, worn down by millions of years of rain and wind. They feel heavy. When you walk into them, you don't feel like you're climbing a mountain. You feel like you're walking into the mouth of a sleeping beast. The vegetation is dense. Rhododendrons thickets so tight you have to crawl on your belly to get through them. Hemlocks that block out the sun. Moss that covers every inch of rock and rot. It's a rainforest in everything but name. And it is damp. That's important for the sound. Moisture in the air changes acoustic propagation. Dry air is brittle. Sound waves snap and fade quickly. But humid air? Humid air is a carrier. It holds onto frequencies. It lets a low-end rumble travel for miles, bending around trees, sliding through the mist. In the Smokies, the air itself is a membrane. I parked my Jeep at an old fire road turnoff, miles from the nearest tourist center. It took me 2 trips to haul my gear to the insertion point. 80 pounds of equipment. Not camping gear, audio gear. I wasn't carrying a rifle. I was carrying a Nagra AVS reel-to-reel recorder. Swiss engineering. the Rolls-Royce of field recording. It weighed 15 pounds on its own. Then there were the batteries, bricks of lead and acid, the cables, the microphones, the parabolic dish. I looked like a pack mule, sweating through my flannel shirt, cursing the incline. My destination was a box canyon I had scouted on topographic maps months earlier. It was a geological anomaly, a natural amphitheater surrounded by steep ridgelines on three sides. Acoustically, it was a trap. Any sound generated inside that valley would stay there, bouncing off the granite walls. Any sound from the outside, the highway, the distant air traffic, would be deflected by the ridges. It was the holy grail, a zero-noise floor. The hike took me the better part of 10 hours. By the time I reached the valley floor, the sun was already dipping below the western ridge, turning the light from gold to a bruised purple. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in 10 minutes. That's the mountains for you. I set up my base camp near a small feeder stream. I needed water, but I also needed the white noise of the creek to calibrate my instruments. I pitched my tent, a small, low-profile canvas dome, but I didn't sleep. The obsession wouldn't let me. I had to set the trap. In bioacoustics, we call it the array. You don't just point a microphone at a tree and hope for the best. You have to cover the spectrum. I spent the twilight hours running cables. I treated the forest floor like a crime scene. I unspooled hundreds of feet of XLR cable, black rubber snakes winding through the ferns. I was meticulous. Every connection had to be taped to prevent moisture ingress. Every cable had to be buried under leaves so the wind wouldn't rattle it. Microphonics, cable noise is the enemy. If a twig hits a cable, it sounds like a gunshot on the tape. I couldn't afford that. I placed my microphones strategically. Microphone A, a Sennheiser MKH 416 shotgun mic, mounted on a tree branch 10 feet up, pointing north, aimed at the choke point of the valley. This was my long ear. It could pick up a squirrel sneezing at 100 yards. Microphone B, a pair of omnidirectional mics spaced 6 feet apart near the creek. This was for stereo imaging. It would give me the room tone of the valley. Microphone C, and this was my secret weapon. A custom-built boundary microphone, a PZM, placed flat on a large, resonant rock near the center of the clearing. Boundary mics use the surface they are on to amplify sound. They are incredible for capturing low frequencies. Footsteps, heavy breathing, the thrum of the earth. By the time I was done, it was fully dark. The kind of dark you only get in the deep woods. No light pollution, just the canopy blotting out the stars. I retreated to my tent, which I had turned into a makeshift control room. I sat cross-legged on my sleeping bag, the Nagra recorder in front of me. The VU meters, those little needles that dance with the sound, were glowing a soft, warm yellow. The pilot light was a steady red eye. I put on my headphones. Sony MDR 7506, the industry standard. They seal your ears completely. When you wear them, the world outside disappears. You exist only in the stereo field. I flipped the switch. Click. The reel started to spin. That soft, hypnotic whirring of magnetic tape moving over the heads at 7.5 inches per second. I turned up the gain. The world rushed in. The first thing you hear is the self-noise of the forest. It's never truly silent. You hear the wind moving through the millions of needles on the hemlocks, a sound like distant ocean surf. You hear the creek, a chaotic bubbling that, when amplified, sounds like a conversation in a foreign language. You hear the insects. The crickets were deafening at first, a high-pitched wall of 15 kHz stridulation. I adjusted my EQ, rolling off the high frequencies to dampen the bugs. I wanted the mid-range. I wanted the breath of the valley. For the first 3 hours, it was standard data collection. I narrated into a small dictaphone. October 14th, 1998. Time, 2100 hours. Ambient temperature 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind negligible. Subjective noise floor is extremely low. No anthropogenic interference. I was happy. I was ecstatic, actually. The recording was pristine. The tape hiss was minimal. I was capturing the soul of the Smoky Mountains. I sat there, eyes closed, listening. I became a voyager in the soundscape. I heard a great horned owl take flight a quarter-mile away. I heard the specific whoosh of its feathers cutting the air. I heard a deer moving through the dry leaves, the crunch, step, pause rhythm of a herbivore that knows its prey. It was beautiful. It was orderly. Nature is a symphony of survival. Everything makes a sound for a reason. To mate, to warn, to flee. Then, at 1:15 a.m., the symphony changed. It wasn't something I heard. It was something that stopped. The crickets. Usually, insects stop in waves. A predator walks by and the silence ripples out from that point, then fills back in once the danger passes. It's a localized effect. This was different. This was a hard cut. In a single second, every cricket, every katydid, every tree frog in the entire valley went silent. Simultaneously. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. It was a vacuum. The air pressure in my headphones seemed to drop. The tape hiss. The noise floor suddenly sounded like a roar because there was no signal to mask it. I opened my eyes. The yellow VU meters on the Nagra had dropped to 0. They were twitching nervously at the bottom of the scale. I held my breath. I didn't want my own respiration to bleed into the mic. Why did they stop? A bear? No. A bear is noisy. A bear crashes. And insects don't go silent for a bear 100 yards away. They go silent when it's right on top of them. This felt like the valley itself was holding its breath. Then I saw the needles jump. Just a flicker. Twitch. Left channel. The shotgun mic. The one pointing north. I focused my attention. I turned the headphone volume up to dangerous levels. I heard it. Click. It sounded like two stones being tapped together. Very soft. Very deliberate. Click. Click. Rhythm. Nature doesn't do perfect rhythm. A woodpecker drums, but it rolls. This was distinct. Percussive. I waited. From the right channel, the stereo pair near the creek, came an answer. Click. Click. My skin went cold. This was triangulation. Something was at the north end of my perimeter. Something else was at the creek. They were signaling. I checked my levels. The signal was strong. They weren't miles away. They were inside the wire, maybe 50 yards out. Poachers, I thought. That was the logical explanation. Men moving in the dark, using signals to coordinate. But poachers use flashlights. I looked out the mesh window of my tent. The woods were pitch black. No beams, no red filters. And poachers wear boots. Boots are loud. Even the best hunter breaks twigs. These things were moving between the clicks, and I couldn't hear a footstep. Not a leaf crush. Not a snapped branch. They were moving through dense rhododendron thickets, terrain that is impossible to traverse silently, and they were doing it like ghosts. I reached for the gain knob on the boundary mic, the one on the rock, the low-frequency ear. I cranked it. Now I could hear the bottom of the room. And that's when I heard the breathing. It wasn't close to the mic. It was maybe 30 feet away from the rock. But the lung capacity, my God. A human breath is shallow, in-out, rapid. This breath was tidal. It was a slow, massive intake of air that went on for 5 seconds. Pause. It sounded like a bellows. It sounded like a horse, but with the wet, controlled rattle of a primate. I watched the VU meter. It was peaking in the 40 hertz range. That's deep bass. You feel that in your chest. I was paralyzed. I sat there in my tent, bathed in the red glow of the pilot light, knowing that something massive was standing in the dark, just outside my visual range, breathing into my microphone. Then, the mimicry started. I had a habit, a nervous tick, when I was setting up gear. I would whistle a little 3-note tune, just a mindless melody. Do-do-do. I had been doing it all afternoon while running cables. From the darkness, captured by the shotgun mic, came a sound. It wasn't a whistle. It was a voice trying to whistle. It sounded like vocal cords that were too thick, too heavy, forcing air through lips that were too wide. Fo, fo, fo. It was the tune. My tune. But it was pitched down 2 octaves. It sounded like a flute played in a grave. I ripped the headphones off. I couldn't handle it. The intimacy of it. It felt like the thing was inside my head. I sat in the silence of the tent, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I grabbed my flashlight, a heavy mag light, but I didn't turn it on. If I turned it on, I would see them. Or they would see me. The logic of the prey took over. Stay still. Stay dark. I sat there for what felt like an hour, listening with my naked ears. But without the headphones, the woods were just quiet. The super hearing was gone. I was deaf again. Eventually, the crickets started up again. Tentatively at first. 1 chirp, then 2. Then the chorus returned. The danger had passed. Or so I thought. I looked at the Nagra. The tape was still rolling. The reels were spinning. I had captured it. I rewound the tape. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the headphones. I had to know. Was I hallucinating? Was it the isolation? The altitude? I pressed play. I listened to the silence, then the clicks, then the breathing, then the whistle. It was there. Magnetic evidence. But then, I heard something I had missed in real time. Because I had ripped the headphones off right after the whistle, I hadn't heard what happened 3 seconds later. On the tape, right after the clumsy fwow, 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 there was a faint sound. It came from the boundary mic, the sensitive one. It was a voice. It was barely a whisper. It was wet, guttural, and sounded like rocks grinding together. It spoke 2 words, clear, unmistakable. Me tell, man. I stopped the tape. I stared at the spinning reels. Metal man. They weren't just mimicking. They were naming. They had seen my gear. They had seen the aluminum tripods, the silver microphone casings, the copper wire. They had watched me set up. They had categorized me. And they had waited until I was blind in the dark to let me know. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with my back against the tent pole, clutching the mag light, waiting for the sun. I told myself I would pack up at first light. I told myself this was impossible. Bears don't speak. Coyotes don't whisper. But the obsession, the disease of the curiosity, it fought the fear. I had a recording of a cryptid speaking English, or trying to. I couldn't leave. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to know what they were. That was the mistake. I treated it like a discovery. I should have treated it like a warning shot, because the next night, they didn't just whisper. They held a trial. I should have cut the cables. I should have run. But the scientist in me, the ego, it wanted to be the one to break the paradigm. So I stayed. And by the time the sun went down on the second day, I realized that Metal Man wasn't a nickname. It was an accusation. Daylight in the Smoky Mountains is deceptive. It washes away the terror of the night. The shadows retreat. The birds sing their little territorial songs, and the world feels rational again. You drink your coffee, you look at the map, and you tell yourself that what you experienced in the dark was just pareidolia, a trick of the mind, the brain trying to make patterns out of chaos. It was an owl, you tell yourself. It was the wind in a hollow log. But I had the tape. I spent the morning analyzing the recording from the night before. I had a portable spectrum analyzer, a clunky brick of a device back then, and I fed the signal into it. The whistle wasn't just wind. It had harmonics. It had a fundamental frequency of 300 Hz with formants that shifted. Formants are the fingerprints of speech. They are created by the shape of the vocal tract. To make those sounds, the creature had to be manipulating its lips and tongue with precise intention. And the phrase, me, tau, man, I looped it, over and over. It wasn't English. It was an approximation of English, like a parrot mimicking human speech, but with a throat designed to roar at lions. It was wet, heavy. I went out to check the perimeter. I walked to the rock where the PZM mic sat. I expected footprints. I expected broken branches. I expected hair. There was nothing. The moss on the rock was undisturbed. The ferns around it were standing tall. It was maddening. How does something that generates 40 Hz breathing sounds, implying a lung capacity of at least 10 liters, walk through a forest without leaving a trace? It defied physics, unless they were placing their feet with such deliberate care that they were stepping between the leaves. That thought chilled me more than a chaotic rampage would have. A rampage is instinct. Stealth is intelligence. I made a decision then. A stupid, arrogant decision. I wasn't leaving. I was doubling down. If they were curious about the Metal Man, I would give them a show. I reconfigured the array. I moved microphone A, the shotgun, closer to the tree line, concealing it inside a hollow stump. I took microphone B, the stereo pair, and widened the field, trying to create a sound stage so I could track movement left to right. And then I added a new element. I took a small battery-powered speaker, used for playback calibration, and placed it near the rock. I was going to talk back. The day dragged on. The silence of the afternoon was oppressive. Even the squirrels seemed on edge. The atmospheric pressure dropped, signaling rain. I sat in my tent, cleaning connectors, checking batteries. The lead-acid bricks were heavy, reassuring. They were my lifeline. If the power died, the ears died. I ate a cold MRE for dinner. It tasted like cardboard. My stomach was a knot of anxiety. At 18 hours, the light failed. The grays turned to blacks. The canopy closed its fist over the valley. I put the headphones on. Click. Tape rolling. Session 02. I whispered into the dictaphone. October 15th. Protocol. Active engagement. The rain started at 20 RU. A light, steady drizzle. Pata pata pata. It created a noise floor on the leaves, a constant hiss in the upper frequencies. It was annoying, but it masked my own breathing. For 4 hours, nothing. Just the rain and the wind. I started to drift. The fatigue was pulling me under. Then, at midnight, almost exactly, the cut happened again. The rain didn't stop, but the texture of the forest changed. The small sounds, the mice, the nightbirds vanished. The presence was back. This time I didn't wait for them to click. I hit the button on my playback device. I played a recording of my own voice, captured earlier. Hello, I'm listening. The sound blared from the small speaker on the rock. It sounded tinny, pathetic against the vastness of the woods. I waited. Silence. Then, a reaction. Not a whisper. A laugh. It came from the left channel. It wasn't a human laugh. It was a chattering, hooting sound, rapid fire, coo 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 coo. It sounded derisive, like a hyena but deeper. Then, a second voice joined in from the right. This one was different. The first voice, let's call him the scout, was tenor, raspy. This new voice was bass, sub-bass. It was the breather from the night before, the alpha. He spoke, and this time, it wasn't English mimicry. It was their tongue. It sounded like samurai chatter, that's what the BFRO calls it, but that term is too reductive. It wasn't just chatter. It was a tonal language. Gara, kota, sika, num. The vowels were elongated. The consonants were hard stops, glottal clicks. The scout answered, sika, num, scree. I was paralyzed. My hands hovered over the gain knobs, tweaking the levels, trying to balance the stereo image. They were having a conversation. They were standing 30 feet apart, invisible in the dark, discussing the metal man. I closed my eyes and focused purely on the soundstage. I could hear a third individual now, smaller, lighter footsteps. Yes, I heard them this time, faint crunches in the wet leaves. A juvenile? The juvenile made a sound, a high-pitched whine, like a curious puppy. The alpha snapped a sound back, a sharp bark. Gut. Discipline. The juvenile went silent. I realized I was listening to a hierarchy. The alpha was commanding. The scout was reporting. The juvenile was observing. I tried to isolate the phonemes in my head. Sika. They used that word twice. Metal man, trap, intruder. The alpha moved closer to the rock. I could hear the distinct squelch of mud under massive weight. The PZM mic diaphragm vibrated with his proximity. He was standing right over the speaker I had placed. He sniffed it. The sound was like a vacuum cleaner intake. Snuff. Then, a sound of disgust. A snort. He tapped the speaker with a finger. Thump. The signal peaked red. The clip light flashed. He didn't break it. He just tapped it, testing it. Then he spoke directly into the mic again. But he didn't speak to me. He spoke to the scout. Nah, lo, rah. His tone was dismissive. Bored, almost. Then he started to hum. It was the most terrifying thing I have ever heard in my life. It wasn't a melody. It was a drone. A constant, low-frequency vibration that oscillated between two notes. It wasn't music. It was a signal. As he hummed, I felt a pressure building in my own ears. My equilibrium wavered. I felt nauseous. He was broadcasting infrasound. In my headphones, the sound was filtered, but my body felt the reality of it. The tent poles started to vibrate. The surface of the water in my canteen rippled. He was jamming me. He knew I was listening. He knew the ears were sensitive, so he was flooding the zone with interference. It was electronic warfare, biological style. I tore the headphones off, gagging. The nausea was sudden and violent. I dry heaved onto the floor of the tent. The humming stopped. Then, the laughter again. From all three of them now. Coo-coo-coo. They were mocking me. They knew exactly what the sound did to a human physiology. I grabbed the mic, the one connected to the speaker. I lost my cool, I admit it. I was scared, sick, and angry. "What are you?" I yelled into the microphone. "What do you want?" The laughter cut off instantly. Silence. Then from the alpha, a voice so deep it sounded like tectonic plates grinding. He spoke English again. But this time, it wasn't a mimic. It was a sentence. A constructed grammatical sentence. "You keep shadows." I froze. "You keep shadows." What did that mean? Was he talking about the night? About secrets? Then the scout spoke. Rapid and aggressive, mimicking my own voice back to me but distorted, mocking my tone. "What are you, what are you, what are you?" He turned my question into a weapon. He repeated it faster and faster until it dissolved into a shriek. Wah! A scream. It wasn't a Hollywood scream. It was 120 decibels of pure primate aggression. It overloaded the mics. The signal distorted into white noise. Then dead silence. The cables were cut, not unplugged. Cut. I heard the distinct snap of copper wire being severed. Microphone A went dead. Microphone B went dead. Only the boundary mic on the rock, the one wireless unit I had set up as a backup, remained active, but they had moved away from it. I sat in the tent, shaking. The silence returned, but it was different now. It wasn't empty. It was waiting. "You keep shadows." I replayed the phrase in my mind 1,000 times that night. Did he mean we hide in the dark? Did he mean we are evil? Or did he mean something literal? Shadows. Recorded images. Memories. Ghosts. Did he know what a recording was? Did he know I was stealing his voice? I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I spent the rest of the night with my hand on a flare gun, watching the mesh door. But they didn't attack. They didn't need to. They had dismantled my array in seconds without me seeing them. They had sickened me with a hum, and they had spoken a riddle. They were playing with me, like a cat plays with a mouse before it breaks its neck. But the recording, I had the recording. I had the proof. And in the morning I would find out that "you keep shadows" wasn't a metaphor. It was an observation of my technology. And they hated it. I should have left then. God. I should have packed up and hiked out. But the next day, I found the gift. Or rather, the trade. They had taken the speaker, my expensive calibration speaker, and in its place on the rock, they had left something. It wasn't a dead animal. It wasn't a rock stack. It was a twisted piece of metal. It was an old, rusted bear trap. But it had been bent. Not broken. Bent. Thick steel bars, twisted into a shape. A spiral. It was art. It was sculpture. And it was a message. We can bend your metal. We can twist your traps. I touched the cold steel. It was impossible strength. And that's when I knew. They weren't just a tribe, they were a culture, and I was the barbarian at the gate. That spiral, I still have it. It sits on my desk. It was the first key, because the next night, they stopped playing games. They brought the elders, and the elders didn't speak in riddles, they spoke history. And what they told me about the metal men of the past, about why they hide, it shattered everything I learned in anthropology class. We aren't the first civilization they've watched rise, and we aren't the first one they're waiting to see fall. In anthropology, there is a concept called ooparts, out-of-place artifacts, things that shouldn't exist in the archaeological record, like a spark plug encased in million-year-old coal. Usually they are hoaxes, but holding that twisted bear trap in my hands, feeling the cold, oxidized steel that had been bent like soft clay by fingers of impossible strength, I knew this was the ultimate oopart. It wasn't just strength. A hydraulic press has strength. A bear has strength. But a bear doesn't bend steel into a Fibonacci spiral. This was aesthetics. This was communication. They were telling me, we understand your tools, and we can unmake them. That third day in the valley was a fugue state. I moved like a sleepwalker. The rational part of my brain, the part that writes grant proposals and peer-reviewed papers, was screaming at me to evacuate. Subject hostile. Capabilities exceed safety parameters. Abort. But the other part, the listener, was addicted. I had capture. I had magnetic tape with the voice of a species that science said was a myth. If I left now, I was just another crazy guy with a story. If I stayed, if I got more, I was Darwin. I was Galileo. I spent the afternoon hardening the site. Since they had cut my XLR cables, I switched tactics. I dug into my reserve crates and pulled out the old iron, dynamic microphones, Shure SM57s, and Electro Voice RE20s. These aren't as sensitive as the condensers I lost, but they are tanks. You can drop them off a cliff and they'll still work. More importantly, they don't require phantom power. No electricity running through the line meant less hum, less interference if they tried to jam me with infrasound again. I ran the cables inside PVC pipes I had brought for a different experiment. I buried them 6 inches deep. If they wanted to cut the feed tonight, they would have to dig. I sat in the tent as the sun began to die behind the ridge. The light turned that bruised, hematic purple again. I didn't use the playback speaker. I didn't try to provoke them. I simply wrote a note on a piece of paper and taped it to the outside of my tent. I am listening. It was a gesture, a submission. Night fell like a hammer. 21 hours. Nothing. 23 hours. Nothing. The forest was quiet, but not the hard-cut silence of the previous nights. The crickets were chirping, but hesitantly. The air felt heavy, charged with ozone, like the moments before a thunderstorm. But there were no clouds. I sat with my headphones on, monitoring the magnetic flux. At 01:33 a.m., the needle on channel 1 moved. It wasn't a footstep. It was a hum. But this wasn't the aggressive, nauseating jamming signal from the alpha. This was lower, slower. It was a resonant frequency. It sounded like a cello bowed in slow motion. Then, a second hum joined in, a perfect fifth above the root note. Harmony. Then a third, an octave below. 3 distinct voices. They weren't hiding this time. They were announcing their arrival. I looked at the frequency analyzer. The fundamental note was 18 Hz. That's right at the threshold of human hearing. You don't hear 18 Hz, you feel it in your bowels. It triggers a primal fear response, the ghost frequency. But mixed with the fear was awe. The harmony was perfect. It wasn't random animal noise. It was a chord. They were tuning the valley. Then the speaking began. It didn't come from the perimeter. It came from the center of the clearing, right near my buried mics. These weren't the voices from the night before. This wasn't the raspy scout or the aggressive alpha. These voices sounded like grinding stones. They sounded like dry leaves skittering on parchment. They sounded ancient. The elders. I pressed record. The reels spun. I listened, eyes closed, tears streaming down my face from the sheer intensity of the acoustic pressure. They weren't speaking to me. They were speaking to each other. Or perhaps they were speaking to the record. The language was clearer now. Maybe because these individuals were older, more articulate, or maybe because they wanted to be heard. It was a pidgin, a mix of the samurai chatter, the clicks and glottal stops, and something else, something that sounded terrifyingly familiar. I heard a word, kuta, then again, kuta, iron, kuta. I froze. Kuta. My mind raced through my linguistics electives. Proto-Indo-European, Sanskrit? No, it was simpler. Cutter. They were saying, cutter. Then another voice, deeper, cracked like old wood. Fireman. I realized then what I was hearing. I wasn't hearing a foreign language. I was hearing English, but an English that had been preserved in amber for centuries, warped by non-human vocal cords, passed down orally through generations of giants who watched us from the tree line. They were reciting a history. They were listing the names they had for us. I grabbed my notebook. My hand shook so hard the pen tore the paper. I started transcribing phonetically. Stoan, breaker, stonebreaker, wood, eater, wood eater, river, poison, river poison. It was a genealogy of destruction. They were naming the eras of humanity not by our kings or our inventions, but by what we destroyed. The stone breakers, the ancients, the wood eaters, the loggers, settlers, the river poison, the industrialists. Then the alpha's voice cut in, the deep bass from the previous night. He wasn't chanting. He was asking a question. Me, Tal, man, keep, sha, Dow. He was presenting me to the council. The elders went silent. The hum stopped. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. The tape hiss sounded like a scream. Then, the oldest voice, A sound so fry-heavy it sounded like tearing fabric, spoke directly into the microphone. He must have been kneeling right over the buried SM-57. The proximity effect boosted the bass to seismic levels. Why, you keep shadow when you are shadow? I stopped breathing. Why do you keep shadows when you are a shadow? It was a philosophical dagger. He was asking, why do you record the world, keep shadows, images, sounds, when you yourselves are temporary shadows? They viewed us as ephemeral, ghosts. We burn bright, destroy everything, and then die. We are the shadows passing over the earth. They are the rock. The voice continued. And this is the part that haunts me. This is the part that made me never publish the papers. The elder started to make sounds. Not words. Sounds. He made the sound of a flint striking steel. Ch, keek. He made the sound of a musket firing. Poofa. He made the sound of a steam train whistle. Whoa, whoa. He made the sound of a chainsaw. Brrrr. And then he made the sound of a siren, an air raid siren. Wah. He was performing a sonic timeline of human technology. He mimicked them perfectly. How? How could an organism living in the 1998 Appalachian wilderness know the sound of a 19th century steam train, or an 18th century musket, unless he had heard them, or his father had, or his grandfather, and they remembered. They didn't have books. They didn't have hard drives. They were the hard drive. Their oral tradition wasn't just stories. It was audio fidelity. They passed down the actual sounds of history, preserved in their massive cortexes. The implication hit me like a physical blow. They have been watching us. For thousands of years. They watched us come out of the caves. They watched us fell the forests. They watched us burn the coal. They watched us split the atom. And they recorded it all. Not on tape, but in the blood. The elder spoke again. Burns. Out. Me. Tal. Rusts. We wait. That was the terrifying secret. They aren't hiding because they are afraid. They aren't hiding because they are weak. They are hiding because they are patient. They know we are a self-correcting problem. We are a forest fire. Violent, hot, destructive. But fires run out of fuel. They are waiting for us to consume ourselves. And when the smoke clears, they will still be there. I looked at the VU meters. The signal was fading. The hum returned, but softer this time. A dirge. A funeral song. They were mourning us. That was the worst part. There was no anger in the elder's voice. There was pity. They looked at me, the metal man with his batteries and his wires, and they saw a dead man walking. They saw a species that was already a ghost. I sat there for hours after they left. The tape ran out. The reel flapped against the take-up spool. Thwoop, thwoop, thwoop. I didn't change it. I felt small. I felt incredibly painfully small. I looked at my gear, my expensive Swiss recorder, my titanium tripod, my Gore-Tex jacket. All of it, just metal, just rust waiting to happen. You keep shadows. I understood it now. We record things because we are terrified of forgotten. We build monuments because we know we are temporary. They don't build. They don't record. Because they don't plan on leaving. I packed up the next morning. I didn't wait for the 3 weeks. I didn't care about the elk or the warblers. I wanted to get out. I wanted to see concrete. I wanted to see electric lights. I wanted to pretend that my civilization wasn't just a fleeting spark in the dark. But the woods weren't done with me. As I hiked out, carrying my 80 pounds of useless metal, I realized the valley was guiding me. I wasn't walking random trails, I was being herded. They wanted to show me one last thing, a warning, or maybe a preview. I came across a clearing I hadn't seen on the way in. It was a graveyard, but not for them. It was a graveyard for us. They don't throw our trash away. They keep it. In that clearing, organized in spirals like the bear trap, were the remnants of the metal men who came before me. Rusted muskets, rotten leather boots, plastic canteens from the 70s, a surveyor's theodolite from the 1920s, and bones, not human bones, machine bones, engines, axles, saw blades, all arranged in a garden of rust. It was a museum of our failure, and in the center of the spiral, there was an empty space, a flat stone, waiting for my recorder. I ran. I dropped everything except the tapes. I left the Nagra, I left the mics, I left the batteries. I gave them their offering. I ran until my lungs burned and my boots bled. I didn't stop until I hit the asphalt of the state highway. I sat on the guardrail, shaking, listening to the cars rush by. Whoosh, whoosh. They sounded like the ocean. They sounded like the end of the world. I have the tapes. I digitized them, but I never released them to the university. How could I? Here is the proof of Bigfoot. Oh, and by the way, they think we are a virus, and they are just waiting for us to die. Who wants to hear that? Who wants to know that the monsters under the bed aren't trying to kill us? They're just waiting for us to commit suicide. But you need to hear it. You need to hear the sound of the elder mimicking the atomic bomb. Because I think the waiting is almost over. I think they're getting ready to come out. Not to fight, but to clean up. Re-entry into civilization is a violent act. We don't notice it because we live in it, but the modern world is an acoustic assault. When I walked out of those woods and drove back to Knoxville, I had to pull over 3 times to vomit. Not from food poisoning, from the noise. The tires on the asphalt sounded like screaming. The radio towers buzzing overhead felt like needles in my fillings. My ears had been recalibrated by the valley. I had spent 72 hours listening to the breathing of the earth, and now I was drowning in the static of the metal men. I retreated to my lab at the university. It was a basement suite, soundproofed for sensitive acoustic research. Double-walled drywall, floating floor, acoustic foam wedges on every surface. It was the quietest place in the city. I locked the door. I turned off the lights. I sat in the dark with just the glow of my monitors. I had the tapes, 4 reels, 6 hours of raw audio. I felt like I was holding a canister of plutonium. For the first week, I didn't analyze. I just cleaned. I transferred the analog magnetic tape to digital DAT, digital audio tape. I was terrified that the oxide on the reels would flake off, that the voices would degrade and vanish. I made 3 backup copies, 1 for the lab, 1 for a safe deposit box, 1 that I taped under the drawer of my desk. Paranoia was setting in. You keep shadows. Every time I duplicated the file, I heard the alpha's voice in my head. Why do you keep shadows? I was doing exactly what they mocked. I was trying to freeze time. Then I began the spectral analysis. You listen to sound with your ears, but you analyze it with your eyes. A spectrogram is a visual representation of audio. Time on the x-axis, frequency on the y-axis, intensity represented by color. Human speech looks like a series of stacked wavy lines, formants. Birdsong looks like sharp, staccato scratches. Wind looks like a wash of gray static. I loaded the Elder's chant into the computer, the section where they mimicked the history of humanity. When the Elder made the sound of the steam train, the spectrogram didn't look biological. Usually, when a human mimics a train, you see the messiness of the vocal cords, the wobble. This was geometric perfection. The harmonics were perfectly spaced. The decay was mathematical. It looked like a machine. It was biomechanical synthesis. The creature wasn't just making a noise. It was reshaping its entire vocal tract to become a resonant chamber that perfectly matched the physics of a steam whistle. I zoomed in on the siren sound, the air raid wail. I measured the frequency. It started at 400 Hz and swept up to 680 Hz. I went to the library. I pulled schematics of civil defense sirens from the 1940s. I found it. The Federal Signal Thunderbolt 1000, used extensively during the Cold War and in mining towns for shift changes. The frequency match was 99.8%. That sound hadn't been heard in these mountains for 40 years. The mines were closed. The sirens were rusted scrap. But the Elder, he had it stored. A perfect, high-fidelity sample file in his brain, ready to be played back to teach the young ones. This is the sound of the metal men when they are afraid. I stopped sleeping. I lived on coffee and vending machine crackers. I became obsessed with the infrasound hum, the jamming signal the alpha used. I couldn't hear it on the speakers. My studio monitors only went down to 40 Hz. The hum was at 18 Hz. But I could see it on the scope. It was a sine wave, a pure, unadulterated sine wave. In nature, pure sine waves are rare. Nature is complex. Nature is jagged. A pure sine wave is usually the product of an oscillator, a circuit. How does a biological organism produce a pure sine wave at 120 decibels? I calculated the energy required. To produce an 18 Hz wave at that volume, you need a diaphragm the size of a bass drum. Their chests, They're barrel chests. They aren't just muscles. They are resonance chambers. They are living subwoofers. I was mapping the biology of a god, and I was doing it alone. That's when the isolation hit. I looked at my colleagues walking past the hallway window. They were debating tenure, arguing about parking spaces, worrying about lunch. They looked like children. They looked like ghosts. Stonebreakers. Wood-eaters. I saw them through the elders' eyes. I saw them as temporary pests chewing on the scenery. I tried to talk to my mentor, Dr. Eris. He was a brilliant man, a zoologist. I invited him to the lab one rainy Tuesday night. "I have something," I said. "Something anomalous from the Smokies." He sat down, expecting a rare owl or a wolf howl. I played the tape. I played the section where the scout mimics my voice. "What are you, what are you?" Dr. Eris listened. He frowned. He leaned in. "That's a parrot," he said. "Or a corvid. A raven. They can mimic human speech." "Look at the spectrogram," I said, pointing to the screen. "Look at the low end. A raven doesn't hit 80 hertz. A raven doesn't have a throat the size of a drainpipe." He adjusted his glasses. "A bear, then? Bears moan. Maybe it's a bear moaning over a raven calling." "It's a conversation, Eris," I snapped. "They are talking to each other." He looked at me. He didn't look at the screen. He looked at me. He saw the dark circles under my eyes, the tremor in my hands, the unwashed clothes. "Arthur," he said gently, "you've been under a lot of stress. Fieldwork can be isolating. Sometimes the mind projects patterns where there are none. Audio pareidolia." He thought I was cracking up. He thought I was hearing voices in the static. "I'm not crazy," I whispered. "I didn't say you were," he said, standing up. "But I think you need sleep. I think you need to step away from the data. It's just noise, Arthur, it's just the woods." He left. Just noise. I locked the door behind him. I played the tape again. The Alpha's voice. "You keep shadows." It wasn't noise. It was judgment. That night the paranoia started. Not about the creatures. About us. I started noticing the clicks on my phone line. I started noticing the same gray sedan parked across the street from the physics building. Was it real, or was it the infrasound exposure? There are studies, obscure military papers that suggest exposure to high-intensity infrasound can cause long-term neurological damage, anxiety, paranoia, visual hallucinations. Had the Alpha weaponized me? Had he planted a seed of madness in my inner ear to ensure I would never be believed? It was the perfect defense mechanism. Don't kill the witness. Make the witness sound insane. I realized I couldn't publish. If I released the tapes, one of two things would happen. The scientific community would destroy me. They would call it a hoax. They would analyze the siren sound and say, "See? It matches a federal thunderbolt perfectly. He just dubbed a recording of a siren over a bear growl." Fraud. The very perfection of their mimicry would be used to disprove them. Or worse, someone would believe me. The military. The bioweapons division. Imagine what they would do to get their hands on a biological infrasound generator. Imagine the vivisections. Imagine the hunting parties. Metal Man. I looked at my machines, my computers, my DAT tapes. I was the Metal Man. If I released this, I wasn't Darwin, I was Oppenheimer. I made a choice. I erased the hard drives. I took a powerful degaussing magnet, a bulk eraser used for wiping videotapes, and I ran it over the lab's servers. I destroyed the digital copies, but I couldn't destroy the masters, the original reels, the tape that had physically been in the valley, the tape that had vibrated with their air. I couldn't burn them. It felt like burning a holy text, so I stole them. I put the 4 reels in a lead-lined film canister. I packed my bag. I resigned from the university via email at 3 a.m. I left my apartment. I left my car. I took a bus to a town I won't name. I rented a basement apartment with cash. I became a ghost, a shadow, just like they said I was. But the story doesn't end there, because you can leave the woods, but the woods don't leave you. Living in the city, hiding, I started to hear it. At night, when the traffic died down, through the floorboards. 18 hertz. At first I thought it was the HVAC system, or a truck idling, but it followed me. If I moved to a new room, it moved. If I put on earplugs, it got louder. It wasn't external, it was internal. The Alpha had tuned me. He had changed the resonant frequency of my own nervous system. I was a receiver now. And sometimes I pick up a broadcast. I spent 10 years trying to tune it out. Alcohol, loud music, sleeping pills. Nothing worked. So I stopped fighting it. I started listening again. And that's when I realized I wasn't the only one hearing it. There are others. The listeners. People who wake up at 3 a.m. with a hum in their chest. People who flee the cities for no reason. We are being called. The signal is getting stronger. The alpha isn't just jamming, he's coordinating. And the timeline, the fire burns out part? I think the fire is starting to flicker. Let me play you the final tape. The one I almost destroyed. This is the tape from the morning I fled. I didn't realize the recorder was still running when I ran from the Museum of Failure. I dropped the mic in the leaves. It kept recording for 40 minutes after I was gone. It captured what they did when I left. They didn't celebrate, they didn't laugh. They sang. There is a philosophical question. If a tree falls in the woods and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? As a bioacoustician, I can tell you the answer is yes. Physics doesn't need an audience. But the nature of the sound changes when the observer leaves. When I ran from that clearing, I dropped my primary handheld recorder. It was a Sony DAT Walkman, a robust little brick. It fell into a pile of fern leaves, face up. The red record light was taped over, standard procedure so it was invisible. It kept running for 47 minutes before the battery died. I didn't listen to this tape for 3 years. I couldn't bring myself to. It sat in the lead box, radioactive with memory. But one night, drunk on cheap bourbon and loneliness, I put it in the deck. I expected to hear them smashing my gear. I expected the sounds of rage, metal being torn, plastic being crushed. The sounds of a dominant species reclaiming its territory. That's what a human would do. If we found a spy device in our home, we would stomp on it, we would scream. But they didn't smash it. They used it. For the first 6 minutes, it's just the sound of me running away. You can hear my panic, the crashing through brush, the heavy, ragged breathing fading out. Then, silence. The noise floor returns. The birds start singing again. The squirrels chatter. The forest thinks it's safe. Then at the 12-minute mark, the birds stop again. Hard cut. They are there. You hear the footsteps first. Not the heavy thuds of the alpha this time. Soft, shuffling steps. Many of them. I counted 6 distinct gait patterns on the spectrogram. They circle the recorder. You hear a sniff. Snuff. It's loud, right against the microphone diaphragm. It peaks the meters. Then, a voice. The scout. Gone. Just one word. Gone. Then, the alpha. Let him run. Then, the sound of movement. But they aren't destroying the Museum of Failure. They are rearranging it. You hear the clinking of metal on stone. They are putting the artifacts back in place. They are tidying the graveyard. Why? Why curate a museum of trash? Because they are the custodians. They are keeping the record straight. Then, at minute 20, the singing starts. It begins with the infrasound hum again. 18 hertz, the ghost frequency. But this time, it acts as a drone note, a foundation. On top of it, a female voice, the matriarch, I assume, starts to vocalize. It's not a melody in the Western sense. It's microtonal. It slides between notes like a trombone. It sounds like a whale song, but transmitted through air, not water. Then, the others join in. Multiphonics, throat singing. Each individual is producing 2 or 3 notes simultaneously. A fundamental tone and a whistle tone harmonic above it. 6 individuals. 18 notes. It forms a chord so complex, so dissonant yet resolved, that it makes the hair on your arms stand up. It sounds like a choir in a cathedral, if the cathedral was made of meat and bone. I analyzed the harmonics. Do you know what they were singing? They were singing a cleaning song. I cross-referenced the frequency patterns with ethnomusicology databases. It shares structures with Navajo healing chants and Tibetan purification rites. They were scrubbing the valley. They were using sound to purge the infection I had brought. My scent, my anxiety, my technology. They were vibrating the air to reset the energy of the place. They were healing the wound I made by existing. But then, the lyrics. Embedded in the chant were words. Not English mimicry this time. Their own language. But because I had the Rosetta Stone of the elders from the previous night, I could pick out the roots. Sha, ka, Ra, the great silence. Ta, lo, the falling sky. Vi, re, end, the end of fire. And then the Alpha speaks over the chant. He delivers a litany. It sounds like a weather report for the apocalypse. He lists the signs. I translated them as best I could. It took me years. Here is what they are waiting for. Sign 1. The water turns to ash. He mimics the sound of choking, the sound of thick, sludge-like water. He's talking about the oceans dying, the acidification, the microplastics, maybe, or maybe something worse, an algae bloom that suffocates the world. Sign 2. The sun burns white. He makes a sound like sizzling fat, high-pitched, painful. The ozone layer, a solar flare, or just the relentless rise of temperature until the crops turn to dust. Sign 3. The metal men sleep. This is the one that keeps me awake. He mimics the sound of the power grid going down. You know that sound? That hum-click silence when a transformer blows? He does it perfectly. Bzzz, clack, and then absolute silence. No cars, no planes, no radios. The great silence. When he makes that sound, the sound of the power dying, the other voices in the choir swell up. They sound relieved. That's the horror. They aren't afraid of the dark. They are waiting for the lights to go out so they can finally rest. They view our electricity as a noise pollution that hurts their heads. Imagine living next to a jackhammer your entire life. That's us to them. We are the jackhammer, and they are counting the days until we run out of gas. The song ends abruptly at minute 42. A twig snaps. The Alpha whispers one last thing. He is leaning right into the dropped recorder. He knows it's there. He knows it's running. He left it on purpose. He speaks to the tape. He speaks to me, to you. Go home. Shadow. Dig your hole. Dig your hole. Not save yourself. Not run away. Dig your hole. Bury yourself. Become a fossil. Because that's all we are to them. Future fossils. The tape runs out of battery 30 seconds later. The last sound is just the wind in the hemlocks, indifferent and eternal. I sat in that basement apartment for a month after listening to that. Dig your hole. It's cynical, isn't it? It's brutal. But look around. Look at what we're doing. We are digging our hole. We dig for oil. We dig for lithium. We dig bunkers for the billionaires. We are preparing for our own burial, just like they predicted. I tried to warn people. I went to online forums. I went to conventions. They are real, I'd shout. And they pity us. Do you know what happens when you tell Bigfoot enthusiasts that the Sasquatch isn't a monster to be hunted, but a superior species waiting for our extinction? They laugh at you. They want a monster. They want King Kong. They don't want a mirror. They don't want to hear that the ape is the evolved one, and the man is the mistake. So I stopped talking. I went underground. I became a shadow, just like the Alpha said. But recently, the hum has gotten louder. My own internal receiver, the damage they did to my ears, is ringing constantly now. 18 hertz, day and night. And I'm hearing new sounds, not from the woods, from the city. I hear the grid straining. I hear the metal groaning. The infrastructure is tired. The metal men are tired. I think the song is starting. I think the cleaning ritual is about to begin. I have one more chapter to tell you, the aftermath, because I'm not the only one they touched. There are others who heard the frequency, and we are starting to find each other. We aren't Bigfoot hunters, we are the terminal caretakers. We are preparing to hand over the keys. The Alpha didn't just warn me, he recruited me. You keep shadows. I am keeping the record. Not for us, for them. I am archiving our history so that when they come down from the mountains, they will remember why we failed. I am the librarian of the apocalypse. Solitude is a myth. You think you are alone with your secret, bearing the weight of the revelation. But trauma has a frequency, and like radios tuned to the same dead channel, eventually, you pick up the static of others. I spent 5 years thinking I was the only one, the chosen one, the cursed one, but then the letters started coming. I had posted a cryptic message on a ham radio forum in 2004. Just a frequency, 18 hertz, and a question. Does anyone else hear the cello? I didn't expect a reply. I expected trolls. Instead, I got an email, then a letter, then a package. The first one was from a woman named Elena. She was a park ranger in Olympic National Park, Washington State, 3,000 miles away from my valley in the Smokies. She didn't talk about Bigfoot. She didn't talk about monsters. She talked about the pressure. She wrote, "It starts at sunset. The air gets heavy. My compass spins, and I hear a choir underground. They aren't singing words. They are singing geometry. Geometry. That was the key, the steam train, the siren, the perfect mathematical mimicry I had analyzed on my spectrograms. She had heard it too. I arranged to meet her. We met in a diner in Nebraska. Neutral ground, halfway between our ghosts. I expected a crazy person, a tinfoil hat type. Elena was military precision. Stiff posture, scanning the exits, eyes tired but sharp. She looked like a soldier who had seen a front line that wasn't on any map. She didn't say hello. She just slid a cassette tape across the table. "Track 3, she said. "Recorded near the Hoh Rainforest, November 1999. I put it in my Walkman. I put the headphones on. It was there. The hum. The 18 Hertz drone. But this wasn't the cleaning song I had heard. This was different. It was faster, more urgent. Thrum, thrum, thrum. It sounded like a heartbeat, or a drum circle. "What is it?" I asked, taking the headphones off. "It's a mobilization," she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "They are waking up the others." That was the day the network was born. We aren't an organization. We don't have a name, really. I call us the listeners, sometimes the caretakers. There are 12 of us now. A sonar operator from the Navy who heard biological anomalies in the Mariana Trench that sounded like throat singing. A geologist from Siberia who recorded seismic groans that had syntax. A surveyor from the Andes who found a cave full of twisted metal sculptures just like my bear trap. We compare notes. We stitch the data together. And a terrifying picture has emerged. The Sasquatch aren't isolated tribes. They aren't scattered animals living in pockets of wilderness. They are a planetary organism. They are connected. The alpha in the Smokies can speak to the alpha in the Rockies. How? Infrasound travels through the earth. Whales communicate across oceans using low frequencies. Elephants communicate through the ground. The Sasquatch use the lithosphere, the crust of the earth itself, as a telephone line. When the alpha in my valley hums at 18 Hertz, he vibrates the bedrock. That vibration travels. It is picked up by the sensitive feet of another tribe 1,000 miles away. They have a global internet made of stone. And for the last decade, the chatter on that internet has gone exponential. They are coordinating. Elena believes they are moving. She tracks migration patterns, not of animals, but of silence zones. She noticed that the zones are shifting. They are moving closer to the edges, closer to the cities. In the 90s, they stayed deep in the bush. Now, they are on the periphery. They are watching the suburbs. Why? Because the fire is burning out. Let me tell you about the symptoms. If you are watching this and you think you might be a listener, here is the diagnostic. It's not just hearing the hum, it's the apathy. That's the side effect the alpha didn't warn me about. Or maybe he did. Dig your hole. Since the exposure, I don't care about human things anymore. I watch the news, wars, elections, stock market crashes, and I feel nothing. It's like watching a sitcom that's about to be canceled. The plot doesn't matter because the show is ending. I look at a skyscraper and I don't see a building, I see a ruin. I see the vines climbing it, I see the glass falling out. I see the future fossil. It's a detachment, a dissociation. We, the listeners, have been partially assimilated into their timeline. We view time like they do, deep time. And in deep time, our civilization is just a blink, a flashbulb popping in a dark room. But recently, the apathy has turned into dread, because the signs are escalating. Remember the signs the alpha sang about? The water turns to ash. Last year I received a sample from a listener in Florida. Red tide, but not normal red tide. The water was thick, gelatinous. The audio recording of the water lapping against the pier sounded dull, dead. The sun burns white. Have you looked at the sky lately? Really looked? The blue is paler. The white is harsher. The UV index is off the charts. The trees know it. I have recordings of sap moving in maple trees. Yes, you can record that. And the rhythm is panicked. The trees are screaming thirst. And the third sign, the metal men sleep. The grid failure. We monitor the grid, not the voltage, but the hum of the electricity. The 60 Hz cycle of the AC current. It's fluctuating. The grid is singing a dissonance. It's unstable. And every time the grid wobbles, the infrasound from the mountains spikes. They are pushing. I have a theory, and Eris would call me insane for this, God rest his soul, that they aren't just waiting for the power to go out. I think they are helping it. I think the 18 Hz signal is destructive to our technology. It interferes with sensitive electronics. It fatigues metal. If millions of them hum at once, if they hit the resonant frequency of the power grid, they could snap the lines just by singing. The walls of Jericho. They are going to sing our civilization down. I live in this apartment, surrounded by my archives. Hard drives wrapped in lead, analog tapes in safes. I am preserving the record. I have recordings of Bach, of the moon landing, of a child laughing, of a busy cafe in Paris. I am curating the best of humanity playlist, because when they come, they will crush the rest. They won't keep our guns. They won't keep our computers. They will keep the bear trap bent into a spiral, the art, and they might keep the music, if it resonates. 2 nights ago, the humming changed again. It stopped pulsing. It became a constant tone. It's ringing in my ears right now. Can you hear it? Arthur toca o ouvido. Uma careta de dor cruza seu rosto. No, of course you can't. You haven't been tuned. But it's loud. It's a siren. It's the all-clear signal inverted. It's the take position signal. Elena called me yesterday. She was crying. She said the birds in Olympic Park have gone silent. All of them. For 24 hours. The hard cut. But this time it's not a valley. It's a hemisphere. I think tonight is the night I finish the archive. I think tonight is the night I put the final tape in the box, seal it with wax, and bury it in the crawl space. Because tomorrow, the metal men might start sleeping, and once the lights go out, they won't come back on. The shadow is passing. The rock is returning. I want to show you one last thing. The reason I know they aren't evil. The reason I know that, despite the terror, despite the dig your hole command, there is mercy in them. It's the last item in the museum of failure that I didn't tell you about. The empty space in the spiral. I went back, years later. I shouldn't have, but I did. The space wasn't empty anymore. They had filled it. A child's doll, lost by some camper decades ago. They found it, and they decorated it. They treated it like an idol, like a precious thing. They know we have children. They know we love. They don't hate us. They hate what we became. They hate the metal man. But they mourn the child. They are waiting for the metal man to die so the child can be born again. Or maybe, so they can adopt what's left. I am scared, I am terrified, but part of me, the part that listens, part of me is ready for the silence. The noise of this world is too much. Maybe it's time for the quiet. There is a specific frequency that concrete makes when it cracks. It's a high-pitched snap like a bone breaking, followed by a low groan as the rebar inside takes the tension. I've been hearing it all week. Not in my building is brick, but from the city itself. The overpasses, the foundations of the skyscrapers downtown. The city is groaning. The listeners confirm it. Elena says the Hoover Dam is vibrating at a harmonic of 18 Hz. The engineers call it turbulence. She calls it resonance. They are plucking the strings of our infrastructure. I am done. The archive is complete. I have digitized every tape, every spectrogram, every notebook. I have transferred them to M-Disk, optical media made of stone-like material that lasts 1,000 years. I am putting the originals, the magnetic reels from 1998, into this lead cylinder. I am sealing it with beeswax. Paraffin cracks over time. Beeswax lasts. The Egyptians knew that. The Sasquatch know that. I'm burying it tonight. Not in the woods. The woods will change. Trees fall. Rivers move. I'm burying it in the one place that will persist as a monument to our hubris, the foundation of a failed shopping mall on the edge of town, a concrete tomb for a concrete age. My health is failing, rapidly. The infrasound exposure has finally caught up with my heart. I have arrhythmia. My chest feels like there is a bird fluttering inside it trying to get out. Dr. Eris, before he died, told me it was stress, but I know what it is. It's entrainment. My heart is trying to beat in sync with the alpha's hum, but the alpha's heart beats at 40 beats per minute. Mine beats at 70. The dissonance is tearing me apart. I am vibrating myself to death. I went for a walk last night, one last patrol of the metal man's domain. I walked through the suburbs. I saw the blue flicker of televisions in every window. I saw the automatic sprinklers hissing. I saw the security lights sensing my motion. It all looked so fragile. It looked like a stage set made of paper. I wanted to scream at the houses, "Turn it off, stop making noise, they can hear you." But I didn't, because I remembered the doll, the decorated doll in the forest. They don't want to hurt the people inside the houses. They just want the houses to stop buzzing. I stopped at a playground. It was 3 a.m. The swing set was moving. There was no wind. Squeak, squeak, squeak. I pulled out my handheld analyzer. 18 Hz spike. They were here. Not in the mountains. Here. In the suburbs. They use the green belts, the power line easements, the drainage ditches. They move through the veins of the city like a virus in the bloodstream. I didn't see them. You never see them unless they want you to. But I felt them. The pressure in my ears dropped. The air smelled of wet dog and ozone. They were watching the playground. Why? Because it's a place for the small ones, the children. They are scouting the nurseries. Are they planning to save them? Or are they just cataloging them before the end? Guraha, Tika, Sum. The small ones have lost the soul. Maybe they are coming to give the soul back. I walked home, followed by the hum. When I got to my door, I found a mark on the wood. It wasn't paint. It was a scratch. Deep. 3 parallel lines. The mark of the bear, or the mimic of the bear. But it was precise. It was a notice of eviction. Your lease is up, Shadow. I'm packing the last box now. I'm leaving the key under the mat. Not that it matters. Locks are for honest men. The forest people don't need keys. They walk through walls of silence. I'm going to drive to the mall. I'm going to bury the cylinder. And then I'm going to drive west, back to the Smokies. I'm going to park my car at the trailhead. I'm going to leave my flashlight in the glove box. I'm going to walk into the dark without a light. I'm going to find the valley. And I'm going to sit on that rock. And I'm going to listen. I want to hear the song one last time, without the recorder, without the fear. I want to hear the cleaning. And when the alpha comes, when he steps out of the rhododendrons, I won't run. I'll offer him my hand, my metal-tainted shaking hand, and I'll say, I am ready. Close the book. See that? Sign 3. The metal men sleep. The grid is destabilizing. It's starting. This is the end of the tape. If you are watching this, the digital file survived. That means the internet is still up. For now. But listen to me closely. When the screens go black, and they will go black, do not panic. Panic is noise. Panic smells like fear, and fear attracts the cleaners. When the power dies, when the water stops, when the silence rushes in to fill the vacuum of our machines, do not try to restart the generator. Do not try to fix the grid. Let it die. Sit in the dark. Light a candle. Beeswax if you have it. And listen. Put your ear to the floor. Put your hand on the wall. You will feel it. 18 Hertz. It will be terrifying at first. It will feel like the earth is grinding its teeth. But if you breathe, if you sink your heart to their rhythm, the fear will pass. You will hear the singing. They will be coming down the streets. You won't see them, but you will hear the shushing of their feet and the hum of their chests. They are coming to collect the plastic. They are coming to bury the engines. They are coming to plant the acorns in the cracks of the pavement. If they come to your door, do not raise a weapon. A gun is just a loud stick. It means nothing to them. Open the door. Show them your hands. Show them you are empty. Show them you are no longer a metal man. Show them you are just flesh and blood, ready to learn how to live in the quiet again. I hope they take us in. I hope we are more than just shadows to them. But if we aren't, if we are just the infection, then let us be a graceful extinction. Let us go out not with a bang, but with a whisper. I hear him. He's outside. He's humming my song. Do-do-do. He remembers. Goodbye, metal men. I'm going to the woods.